Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing a GeForce GTX 1066GB model in Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. This one is the MSI Gaming X version of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers, and I am manually overclocking it, as you can see right here. You can check out all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Up's GPU-Z. Again, it's the 6GB version of the 1060, and over on the left, we're pairing it with the Ryzen 5 3600X and 32GB of DDR4 3200MHz in dual channel. Let's get into it, shall we? Oh, the little 1060 is struggling, my friends. Here in the menu, it's getting 31 frames per second. Okay, let's go over the settings first. I'm starting at 1080p resolution using FSR3 as the temporal upscaler, where it's turned off at the moment. It's just applying sharpening. And over on the graphics settings, it's set to the low settings preset, not the lowest settings. All right, some things can still go lower, and we will touch them in just a little bit. But yeah, let's start like this. Here we have it, guys. The 1060 is officially dead. At least in this game. Look at this. Oh my gosh. But do these look like low settings, guys? No. Definitely not. It looks really, really good for it being low settings. Let's just... Even the textures. The textures are set to the lowest already, and this is what they get. It's like, whoa, that's really high fidelity, actually. Okay, VRAM usage is under control, which is great to see. The 6GB version of this card can actually handle it in terms of VRAM, but unfortunately... yeah, those FPS are far from good, I would say. It's not playable whatsoever, guys. We'd be looking at like a PS3 experience at the moment with GTX 1060 here in this game, I guess. And I say PS3 because the PS3 actually ran Far Cry 3 at 25 frames per second. If not locked, it was often around that number. So yeah, pretty interesting to see this. A lot of people are still using GTX 1060s according to the Steam hardware server. And well, yeah, just forget this. Unless FSR3 has something up its sleeve to save it. I'm not sure if it will though. Let's try it out, okay? FSR3 is now gonna be set to fixed. I could use the biased version of the scaling mode, but that's a little bit more intensive. The fixed one is just the default upscalers that you see in other games as well. So let's set this to quality, and here we go. That's a massive improvement. Okay, all right, now this is gonna be playable. All right. Oh. Thank God. Okay, 1060 is not dead after all. It still has some life left in it, as you can see, guys. We're getting above 30 frames per second at the moment. I'm going to start counting the FPS. I'm going to run around, try to find some enemies and fight them. And I'll also try to see the lowest FPS that we can get. Although this area right here is actually really, really intensive because of all of this water and the vegetation around it. I mean, the map is all vegetation, basically. It's a big forest, which looks insane. Also, guys, with quality FSR3 here at 1080p resolution, you can see a ton of shimmering right there. Yeah, that does not look good, but I am using a 4K monitor, so on a 1080p smaller monitor, you know, it should look okay. But overall, I could still play the game like this. It's definitely a heck of a lot better than 25 to 30 frames per second most of the time, which is what we were getting at native res. Doesn't look as good as native res, but hey, I will take it, okay? I will take it. 1060 still has a little bit of life. I'm happy to see that, okay? Maybe GTX 1080 Ti is gonna handle this like a champ, you know? Let me just check out the water here. Not a problem. This is so good to see, my friends, because this is usually really intensive. Waterfalls like this, you know, they are extremely intensive in games. And if you go to a waterfall, for example, in Starfield, you're just gonna get wrecked, okay? It actually drops your FPS by like, what, 4 times or something crazy like that. Okay, but I think it already dropped from 30 FPS because it's really, really close to 30 at the moment. Yeah, look at that. If I move around like this, yep, there we go. It definitely does drop here and there. It also has some pretty big frame time spikes or stutters, although they're not really too noticeable, but I can definitely feel them, okay? If you're not really looking for them, it could be playable like this, let's say that. I'm gonna stop it there for low settings. Let's try like performance as well. I'm curious to see it on performance at 1080p. Yeah, with a still image, it still looks really good, actually. All right. Whoa, wait a second. Did I apply it? I don't think I applied it, right? No, it is applied. This is set to performance at the moment. The game is being rendered at 540p, 50% of 1080p by the vertical resolution. That's how it works. But yeah, it definitely looks far from 540p. It shows you how well they have implemented FSR3 in this game. It actually works pretty well, guys, aside from the shadows flickering all over the place. But it's probably due to the low graphics over here, or low shadow detail. All right, let's stop it. This doesn't look like low whatsoever, so I'm gonna try to lower them further. All right, so you got shadow quality right here, which is set to low. I'm gonna set that to very low. You can see the differences right there on the right. See, like, low settings actually gives you some soft shadows. Very low settings still gives you shadows, but they are very sharp. The shadow proxies are turned on, and this actually helps with frame rate, so leave it enabled right here. And what else can we touch? Volumetric fog. There we go. Let's change that to very low. Object detail. Yeah, okay, let's do 0. We're doing very low settings, all right? Micro detail quality. Ooh, I see a lot of difference there in the image. This might be a very intensive setting, guys, and this will probably make it look like very low. I don't know, still has a lot of vegetation. Particle detail. All right, that also makes quite the difference here. And now this one will add a little bit of contrast or whatever it is. Whatever. Yeah, the textures are all set to the lowest already. I'm going to apply it. It doesn't prompt me to restart it, but I will still do it. Oh, actually it does. I will do it. Oh, things are not looking great, guys. We gained about 2 frames per second in the menu over here. Okay, 30 frames per second. It's native 1080p, but it definitely does drop by quite a lot. Oh, now we're back into the low 20s and mid 20s. This is almost the same thing. It almost looks the same as well. Like, what? You know what? I'm gonna try to lock it to 25 frames per second. It's a very bad idea, but I just want to see if the frame time becomes super smooth and consistent. Apparently, it still has a couple of spikes here and there, but yeah, it's definitely way more consistent than having it unlocked. When we had it unlocked, we could see a ton of more little spikes there, or bigger spikes in the frame time graph, or maybe it just happens in different areas. But yeah, I feel like it is a little bit better when it comes to that. Never mind. Damn it. Okay, now I locked the FPS using Rivetuner Statistics Server, alright, which is also showing the on-screen display along with MSI Afterburner, and this way it actually becomes a buttery smooth frame time graph. Look at that. It doesn't move whatsoever. It's a much more consistent experience unless you turn around like this very fast. If you turn around very fast, GPU usage actually maxes out. That's what's happening, and that's what's causing the frame time issues there. So maybe play with a controller and lowest sensitivity possible, so it doesn't crap its pants every time you turn the camera around. Maybe on a handheld device like a Steam Deck, for example, this would have been acceptable, especially with like the VRR and maybe with a lower input lag of the OLED version, but of course this is not going to be playable on a Steam Deck at all. I actually tried it on my ROG Ally already, and it was a stuttery mess. That system just doesn't have enough RAM to use as VRAM and system RAM, you know, to play this game properly, so that's a big shame. It should have come with like at least 20 gigabytes of RAM. That would be nice. But yeah, that's the story for another video. Right, we're back here running unlocked FPS again, guys, getting around 30 frames per second, and it's time for us to apply some scaling. So let's use Quality FSR3 here. Here we have it, getting 40 frames per second. You know what I would probably do, just to avoid the stuttering issues and so on? Like, that frame time is pretty inconsistent, right? I don't like that. I would just lock it to 30 FPS. It gets down into the mid-30s very often. It will probably go down to the low 30s very often as well. Previously, it even dropped from 30 FPS a little bit on the low settings instead of the lowest settings, which is what we're using right now. Also, speaking of lowest settings, this looks absolutely nothing like lowest settings, right? Like, what How can you call these settings lowest settings, right? Look at the freaking textures of these things. Oh boy, that's kind of crazy, right? Okay, now I've locked the FPS to 30 just to have that smooth frame time graph with Riva Tuner once again, and it's just flawless. If you really want that 30 FPS experience, this is gonna do it absolutely fine. Again, unless you do this. It's a lot better than it was before, actually, for some reason. Maybe it's the area where we are at the moment that isn't as intensive as the middle of the forest. Maybe if I start doing this here. No? Alright. Alright. I like it. Okay, apparently it's gonna be 30 FPS locked the entire time. 1% lows don't move. There is no stutter to speak of. And it's a much better experience than unlocked FPS, that's for sure. Still moving around like this a little bit just to see if things stutter or not. But I think it's pretty stable at the moment. Alright, so that's going to be playable on a GTX 1060 using FSR3. FSR3 to the rescue once again. Thanks AMD for providing it. Unfortunately... Oh, hello Jack, how's it going? Unfortunately, we don't have access to the frame generation part of FSR3 with the GTX 1060. It's just grayed out. I can't select it here with this GPU. So that is a bit of a shame, because that could have possibly increased our FPS up into like the 60 FPS mark, and maybe playing with 60 FPS locked, you know, like that would have been a great experience. Even with the added input lag, it would have felt a lot smoother. And for a single player title, yes, it's going to be bad, the input lag, but I'll take the smoothness in this particular one at least. Maybe add a little bit of motion blur as well, because motion blur sometimes disguises the fact that you are running at super low FPS, and it's not really too amplified in this one, you know? It's not really that noticeable. I thought it was going to be more noticeable. I could see myself playing like this in another dimension. I'm just kidding. It is going to be playable, okay? Whether or not you should buy this game for $70 if you have a GTX 1060 to play it at basically 720p upscale to 1080p and 30 FPS locked in lowest settings, well, that's up to you. I don't feel like this is a worthy experience. I would probably upgrade my GPU first. Okay, one more thing, guys. I want to check it out using TAA instead of FSR3 because the requirements for FSR3 are actually higher than GTX 1060. So maybe it's gonna perform better. Obviously, it won't look as good, I think. Yeah, I can... Ooh, that has a lot of noise over there. Damn. Yeah, it's not as good looking, and it still gets around the same FPS, I guess. 40s. Maybe a little bit higher FPS, but we're not in the same place. Still stuttering, still dropping into the 30s. It's about the same thing, I guess, guys. So, use FSR3 with GTX 1060. There's no need for TAA. That's been it. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one very soon. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.